This is your co-host, Wes Lyon, and with me, as always, Dr. Scott Menaker. Scott, welcome back.
Hey, great to be here again, and we're looking forward to our continuing our conversations on a little bit of clinical stuff. And
we had to cut that one off because we were going to go down the rabbit hole of digital.
For sure, which is kind of been it is and will be a game changer in the dental world. And I can't imagine what it's going to be like in the next probably 10 years from where it's at today. So
now I remember this stuff when I actually interviewed here was kind of first coming out. So one of my interview questions, and I knew nothing about dentistry back in the day, was revolving around how to do the math. And fortunately, I was able to do the math on it pretty quickly. But bring it into really where, and now that I look at it, it matters something else a whole lot more. And I ran into this because, I had a doctor who was considering buying a CEREC machine. And I got that this doctor was probably buying it for their own entertainment or love for dentistry. And it's a big purchase to buy a CEREC machine. So it was a lot of money to spend. So I was going through the doctor trying to figure out the economics. And, so all of a sudden I'm trying to figure out how much chair time we're going to gain. And that's when that doctor explained his crown experience to me. And I immediately stopped doing the economics and looked at him and said, yeah, you just need to buy this thing. That is an awful patient experience. When he walked through, it was like, not only gain this chair time, but I'm getting this chair time back because the patient is going to be gone out of my office and doesn't need to return to see me. And they don't have a provisional crown in their mouth for, how long do you typically have those in?
It could be 2 to 3 weeks, right? And you're worried, are they going to come out? Are they going to eat something? Is it going to come loose or is it going to come out? Or if it's a front tooth, is it going to pop off and they're going to be out of town?
And the other thing that really drove me up a wall was, this won't be the same for everyone. Some people don't have a CEREC and still do scans. But he goes, yeah, with this includes the scanner and they won't have to have impressions anymore. And in my mind, I haven't had an impression in a very long time as a patient of dentistry. In my mind, I just thought he was doing scans. And when he said, I'll never have to do an impression again, I was immediately, but your patient experience and your patient flow can't afford, to make this change. So I think it's really where the world is going. We can talk about it. And I think we should put the finances on the back end of it because not everybody's fully busy. And you were talking, that's how they were selling a CEREC machine at first. And they completely missed the point, which is if you aren't 100% busy, your profit's not going to go up because you opened up chair time. You already have open chair time.
Right. That's
not an issue. However, the patient experience and somebody coming back into your office or referring people into your office, that is a game changer. So I kind of see it and I can kind of get the gist of it from my point, but Scott, tell me a little bit about your story and how it impacted your practice, more importantly.
Yeah. So, I obviously spent half of my career doing the traditional way. We took impressions, we made temporaries, we tried to figure out ways to be more efficient with that. But at the end of the day, we were still doing it the same old way because there really wasn't another alternative. And
question for you to interject. Do they teach students to take impressions these days?
Yeah. And I think they need to, because you need to have some baseline to go from. Some schools are probably not. It just depends on, some schools are more equipped to, with the digital systems in place. But it's all going in that direction. I think, some get a tremendous amount of exposure to digital. Some don't get very little. But it's coming and it's there. I was doing this, again, about 20 years ago and just thought that it finally made sense to me. Because I could do things a little bit better and more efficiently and more effectively. There was obviously some learning curves with that. But now as we've gotten into the third generations of cameras and the ability to scan and materials, I think back, I had an associate that came and joined our practice about 3 years ago. And Kevin came out of school, had done a few crown preps, and that was really about it. Well, his first year in, he joined it busy. We had 2 doctors and Kevin came in to join our practice. Kevin did about 70 crowns his first year out of school. Kevin never took an impression. I want you to think about that. He sent some of them off to have some zirconia crowns made because we weren't doing zirconia crowns in our office yet. But everything else, he was designing, milling, and doing these same day crowns. And I'd probably say 75% of them were that way. There's a time and a place for everything. You sometimes can't do that. He wasn't gifted, doing anterior teeth, so he didn't do those. I think he probably did a worse job with his anterior temporaries, but that was a whole nother story. But it changed the experience. And I'll never forget the telling patients how we were going to do it, because most people, most people have had a number of crowns over time. That may change with this current generation of people and younger people, but my generation, they've got a number of crowns, either from grinding teeth, cracking teeth, decay, you name it.
Well, that might somewhat come to where you practice too. I think
it can be, sure.
A lot more younger doctors want to practice, close to the city, and they want to get very educated. And I've seen practices where they're just hygiene departments, an occasional filling. But
there's plenty out there to do. You just got to set yourself up, and we'll talk probably in future episodes about.
I see procedure mixes. It's still the most popular procedure.
Yeah, and it's the most profitable, and it should be. But it was doing that really for me changed my whole outlook. I said it really made dentistry fun. I really enjoyed the design process. And I transferred some of that over to my assistants, but I wanted to become a master. And it's probably why I became a CEREC trainer. And a buddy of mine, he and I opened up our own little, we did some CEREC training for offices in Charlotte on the side, just because we really were passionate about doing it the right way. But it was a game changer for making my practice life more enjoyable. And then I would show patients, they would see this same day crown being made and milled. And I'd have people take videos of it because their friends were telling them it couldn't be done. So it's really been, for me, it was a game changer, but it really was. We'll talk about first the scanners. Now you have the ability, you don't have to do the same day crowns. You could scan it, send it to the lab, make a temporary, and eliminate the impression piece, which is probably one of the biggest problems because you have expansion and contraction of materials as they're being made. This eliminates them.
I think the bigger problem there is just being a patient in the chair and getting an impression.
Yep. Yeah, and trying to say, don't drool, hang on, wait another minute.
Oh, it tastes awful. And then it's, your mouth, she never quite gets it all when you're in that chair. So you got to go home and really rinse your mouth out.
Right. Or it feels like it's going down your throat, which it's never that. And if you could just say, listen, I'm going to take 2 minutes to scan upper and lower arches and a bite and send that off to the lab. The labs will even, if you send most of the bigger labs, if you send them an impression, they're going to scan it.
They have a scanner.
They're going to scan it, and they're going to make it because their people can be, we're talking about efficiency and effectiveness. You're not pouring a model. You're not trimming a die. You're not waxing a metal coping or stacking porcelain. They're doing everything digitally and using all of these milling and digital workflows to improve what they're doing. They'll get it back to you much faster. There are sometimes we could get a zirconia crown back from a lab in probably less than sometimes we could get it back in 3 or 4 days. Crazy.
That's pretty quick. So then you can, if you have chair time, you get the patient back.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Right. And they fit well, less adjustments, because again, you're eliminating some of those things. So the digital workflow just is going to be as you get out. And if you're looking for a job or looking for practices to join, that would be one of the questions I would clearly want to understand. Are they interested in that? Are they looking forward to implementing it soon? Or are they like, no, we think that, if they're saying to you, we think impressions are the best way to go and we're just going to stick with it, you got to start weighing, is that the place you want to be?
Oh, absolutely. Well, something you said, you can get it back in 3 to 4 days and it fits better. But you were making your own crowns for the last 15,
Yeah,
20
at least
years.
50. Yeah, the last 15, 20 years.
Now, when you make them yourself, do they also, what's the quality like if assuming you have to get good with this CEREC, but what's the quality like there versus the lab? Can you get the same quality and get
Ab-
it on in the same day?
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, there's a time and a place, and if you do it wrong, or you design it wrong, or you scan something, and you still have to isolate where that margin is. If you do that wrong, I mean, there were times I would make a crown, it would come back, and there would be a void in it, and I'd look at it and go, and I knew exactly who it was on. It was on me, and I just didn't. I missed something, but I could just quickly correct it. Most of the time, I catch it when I took the scan, um, but every once in a while, you do it at the end, and you knew where the problem was. Versus, the typical Wes, when if you get something back from the lab and it didn't fit, here's what every dentist does. Who do they blame?
The lab.
The lab, of course, because the lab guy
I'm not
is
blaming myself.
the lab guy's not sitting in your office. But most of the time, if it didn't fit well, or there's not enough, you've ground through the porcelain on a PFM crown, it's because you didn't do it right. And you go, oh, the lab didn't make it right. If you send them the same impression back, you're going to get the same thing back. And I've talked to labs, and some of the bigger labs in the country, and they said, you'd be amazed. Doctors will send us a pile of goo and tell us, just do your best. And it's never going to fit, and they're going to put it in, and they're obviously committing malpractice, but they're, but I was telling Wes earlier, I had a doc, I was doing some, as I'm doing some of this rescue training, I went into a doctor's office to help with a problem she was having. And obviously she's blaming the CEREC and the computer for it. But I quickly looked at her scans and quickly looked at what she was making, and quickly knew this was all on her. Her preps were terrible. Her scans were terrible. And if she was delivering this and putting it in, it wasn't going to fit. And it kind of got to the point she actually had some lawsuits going on. I mean, and that's a terrible thing to hear as a dentist, that you're being sued, let alone the dental board is looking at you. And her lawyer actually called me and said, I'm looking for a witness. And I said, for which side? I said, because I could be a great witness for the plaintiff, in this case, the person suing her. I said, you do not want me going anywhere near this, because she's not doing good dentistry. She was putting it all and saying, hey, the digital workflow is going to be great. And it wasn't, junk in, junk out. And so the digital workflow in this case, you sometimes will take an impression and you might have a little void that you can't see, and you send it to the lab, and the lab would maybe call you and go, hey, listen, doc, there's something here that this is not a good impression. Well, if you're using a scanner, you see it. And it could be the same whether you're starting to do digital dentures, whether you're doing Invisalign, whether you're doing sleep appliances, bite guards. The sky's unlimited. What surgical stents for implants. If you don't have a good scan or good impression, scanner's just another way of getting an impression of the teeth. You're gonna have problems.
So it sounds like, getting the crown done this way is probably the gateway to doing higher level procedures down the road, with the scan.
Absolutely.
Using it to its maximum ability. This kind of the foundation, getting the crown going. And I think from I think it's fascinating that people were taking, videos of you making these same day crowns for them and sending it to their friends. And I mean, what better marketing than, oh my gosh, I went in there and they scanned the thing and had it the same day. And, it's funny you mentioned that. I don't believe I've ever had a same day crown. I've got 3 in my mouth. I think I had to return for all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And again, it doesn't mean you're a bad dentist. I mean, there's some amazingly gifted dentists, and some would say, they don't believe in it. That's okay. Um, but most people have understood and have seen, and research has clearly proven that you can get a great restoration with these same day systems. You
and
just have to make sure you're doing all the right thing, the right thickness, the right reduction, the right fit. You have to have the settings right. You got to design it right. Because if you don't design it correctly, you're going to have patients trapping food, and you're going to not being able to floss it or have it in open contact. All of those things, it's just another skill set to have.
Now, to be fair, I think we should point out to everyone we're very, very biased here that we think doing great dentistry, having a great patient experience will lead to you not taking insurance and lead to a lot more money in your pocket.
It will.
We're not shameful about that. We're not going to be bashful, but I think this is one of the tools in the toolbox that, as you're a young dentist, you really need to get honed in on and make sure you have that, hey, you're providing that fantastic patient experience, even when somebody has to get a crown. Nobody wants to get a crown.
Right. And I've been talking, I've talked to a lot of dentists around the country, and talking to one who's got, they've got CEREC, they've got probably more CEREC equipment in their practice than you can imagine, but they're insurance driven. And so in their case, they're making it work for them because they're milling it. They've got somebody, and their assistants are doing it. They're cutting out some of their expenses by keeping it in-house. So there's two sides of it.
Segue to the financial aspect, which as an associate may not be as important. And that's why I wanted to start on the patient experience. As you're not fully busy and you have empty chair time, it's not really financially impacting you. However, at some point in your career, can you remember the point in your career in which getting an hour of chair time back now made you more profitable?
Yep. Yeah. I had to be more efficient with two really good assistants who would allow me to kind of bounce from room to room to room to room. And at some point I probably got tired of that. And that's where this digital workflow really was just kind of fun. It gave me a little more time where I needed it. I didn't have to be this franticness of having to kind of be in a place. And again, I was much better. I was having better scans, better impressions. I was sending the labs, whether it's Invisalign, sleep appliances, whatever, I'm sending them better things that they're digitizing, printing, and they're like, hey, listen, we're just going to store it, because we never kept impressions, but you always kept, you could keep these CERECs, you could download them and keep them forever if you wanted. But labs could say, hey, listen, we've got this for the next 5 years, especially if they're giving you a guarantee on a bite guard. Patient says, hey, my bite guard is cracking. You could look at it, call the lab and go, hey, use the same ones, make it. And literally the patient never has to walk in your door. And the old system was, well, you got to come in. I got to take new impressions. I got to take new bites. I got to send it to the lab. And it just is a whole.
Definitely. This is a side I've spent a lot of the time working on too with doctors and trying to figure out if they should buy the CEREC, not from a patient perspective, but hey, let's just strictly look at the financials. So I'm going to save, and everyone's going to be a little bit different, whether they pay for the lab, what they pay for the material. And, I always kind of look at when I do this, and, a lot of people listening probably aren't owners yet, but when you become an owner and you're looking at investing in a piece of equipment to save you time, you're going to look at, okay, if I finance it over 5 years, what's the monthly payment going to be? And it could very easily be $4 or $5 grand for, scanner or CEREC machine, pretty easily get up there. You're spending $5 grand a month. So all of a sudden we go, okay, well, how many crowns do we do? And we're going to save about $140 per crown that we do in-house versus what we send out. So, just depending on how many of them you do, that's going to be a really hefty amount of money. But the other part, not a lot of people talk about or realize, is that empty chair time. The second place I go to calculate that if we're fully busy is, hey, what does this doctor produce, not the hygiene department. What does the doctor produce per hour? And how many crowns are we doing? And how many second appointments are we saving? And I mean, that number, it can be extremely profitable to just get that chair time back, depending. A really seasoned doctor, they might do the follow up, put the crown on in 30 to 45 minutes. Does that seem reasonable?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yep. That's right.
It can probably go up to an hour for
It depends, but it shouldn't be long. But
it shouldn't be long. But let's just say 30 minutes. So for every crown I do, I save 30 minutes, and it takes an hour 15, hour 30. Basically for every 2 to 3 crowns that you do, you've opened up enough chair time to do another one. In the same amount of time you would have done the 2 or 3, you're now doing 3 or 4. And now you're sitting there looking at, well, if I'm backed up with production, I'm looking at how much this CEREC is saving me. Well, it's saving me the 140. However, it's making me
it's making even more money.
A lot more money. And I should expect a lot of these practices, they're that busy. I actually expect that we're going to collect more than this thing costed in addition in just what we grabbed back in chair time and got people in.
It was really funny. It's like I used to refer to it as, you get the loan. I don't know, it was $130,000 way back. It's way more than that today. But when it got paid off, here's what I used to say. I said, we're just printing money. Meaning my milling unit's paid for, my scanning unit was paid for. The only thing I was really paying for was blocks, and some software updates and things like that. So, now again, you're going to have more investments because you're going to have the next generation of scanners and all of those things. We've talked a lot about CEREC, and we're just using that as the example because that was my world. There's lots of new ones out there.
As we mentioned last episode, we're not sponsored, but we are open to it.
But what it says is, scan. Sometimes we would advocate strongly to have scanners and be in a practice where you're scanning things, even if you're not doing that. It is the next step. I think if you go to if it's a baby step of, hey, I'm going to scan first, and then I'm going to go to the next one of, I'm going to make them in the office. Perfect.
At least if you get really good at scanning, because some doctors may not have a choice that are listening. Right. You're going to go to the owning doctor and tell them to spend $160,000 on a piece of equipment because you want it.
Right. And you can
good luck.
And there's even labs out there now that says, hey, listen, if you'll guarantee us a certain amount of crowns, we'll give you the scanning unit. I mean, there's that much of an enticement today. So we're just encouraging.
It's saving them time because they're just scanning your impression.
They're just taking that and immediately putting it into a digital workflow to make you that crown. They're not doing anything. No shipping, no back and forth. We're just encouraging you strongly to, as you get out and as your careers are beginning, to figure out what are the things that you like to do. What are the things that you're good at? What are the things you want to get better at? And figure out how scanners are going to do it. The one things we won't really talk a lot about, because I really didn't have a lot of experience, but it's coming, is the printing piece. You can print, so many different things today. You can print your own ortho trays. You can print bite guards and sleep appliances and surgical stents. And it's going to keep coming. It's not quite as efficient as it's going to get to, but it's there. I kind of was telling Wes, I wish I could go back about 5 years because I would have bought a digital printer. It was in my DNA to have that. And integrated, and maybe I bought CEREC a little early, but I just felt like I was ready for something, and I paid a lot of money for something that was still early, but I felt like it was where it was going, and I clearly got that right.
Yeah, it's funny. The early adopters, kind of the ones that test it, figure it out for everybody, and they probably lose a little bit of money on it in the early stages. And that's kind of where printing is right now. I'm with you. Eventually, printing is going to be super efficient. However, right now, I'm having to dial back a lot of practices from printing. I'm sitting there looking at it, and I'm going, Well, your staff costs are through the roof because you're paying somebody to monitor that printer all day and
Yeah.
do this for
Right.
you, and it's not costing you that much to send it to the lab. But hey, it's something where I think a
They
lot
just
of
got to
people.
right. They just got to figure it out because some practices are. I mean, they're using it and it's efficient. It is incredible what they're doing with them. I have a friend of mine's got an orthodontic practice, and that thing is running all day long, and their assistants are well trained, and so it's seamless for them. But putting anything into place, you got to make sure people are trained right and follow the rules and are doing things the right way. And like CEREC or anything else, that takes time. Scanning's pretty simple. You got to do it right. You can't make, it can't have puddles of blood and bubbles but you got to make sure if you do those things, digital is going to it's the wave of the future, obviously. It's going to make your life as a practitioner much more effective and efficient. It'll make you some more money down the road and open things up to do other things.
Also, I think right now, as you are a young doctor, these are tips, things that, hey, ownership's not here tomorrow, but it's something I want down the road. Great. What are my steps to take? I think the first step is to just make sure you master all this stuff. So when
Yep.
you go in, you can't necessarily change the procedures on a practice you're an employee of, but you can figure out that, hey, you know what? Even if they don't have a CEREC at my office now or it's seldomly used, I'm going to get really, really good at it because I know I want to do this when I buy or open my own practice, that I want to do these things. So now is a great time to just get everything rolling.
Right.
Do
You
it the
may have some
way.
time in your hands, and just looking at how you can, implement these things and how it might prove to be a more enjoyable, yet in a profitable and efficient way to do things.
The patient gets a better experience. You spend less time doing a procedure that you're getting paid the same on no matter what. I mean, it's really just, it's a home run across the board.
It's a win-win on both sides, and that's clearly what we're
It's
all about.
the digital. I think it's kind of funny that the digital still has some holdouts, but the world, it's here, right? It's here. If you're putting in, hopefully, most people are digital on the scans, but if you're putting impressions in their mouths still, the dentist down the street isn't.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And that's going to be noticeable. Nobody wants an impression.
Right. And if you go look at it, anything out there, if you look at most people's websites, and I go to a lot of websites around the country, the ones that are digital, man, they're jumping and they're popping at you, and you're going, I want to be there. And the ones that are just kind of the tried and true, you can kind of see those from the way you can even see it from the website. So
no, definitely. Well, Scott, it's another
it's
great
been
one.
fun. We enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to kind of our next.
Be back next
topics.
week.